Nobody was looting anything. They simply said, we are getting it done and it can't be done. Do I see that something like that happening in Africa? Yes. We must never forget that you begin to see people doing that. I saw in Ghana they were raising those issues. I saw in different African countries people are beginning to ask questions in different fora, even the social media. Yeah. But the social media has its own limitation. There is no virtual demonstration. If you demonstrate virtually, who cares? You can demonstrate. There must be online boots on the ground. Yeah. Thank you.
Lovely. I think I also need to bring a balance as well, especially in South Africa when it comes to leadership in the church. I always say to people, if in your church you are the only one successful as a leader, and everyone that you are leading, they're in poverty, there's something wrong with you. I think that's a problem that we have in the leadership in this country, both in the church and also in the politics. You find a guy who is a president. It is only in his heart, in his house where there's lights. The neighbors, nothing. It is only him. And he's just enjoying the benefits of leadership. But he is not making an impact in the lives of people. How I define leadership is that leadership must better the lives of people. Unfortunately, in Africa, most of the pastors, if I can say, when they die, the very same thing that they've built also dies, because everything revolves around them. We build in ourselves. That is the problem of this country. If we can lead with the future generation in mind, we are going to make an impact in this nation, and we're going to bless the next generation.
Well said.
Thank you.
Well put, well put. Another common question that is repeatedly being asked is around a country just next door to South Africa, Zimbabwe. Robert Mugabe was known probably as one of the most revolutionary leaders in Africa. After gaining independence in 1980, he led his country to a point that it became the breadbasket of Africa. But fast forward to 2022, everybody knows what's happening there. He grabbed land from where he thought it should be taken from. So the question here is that how can we use the Robert Mugabe route without necessarily ending up where we are? Land is a big issue in Africa. People want land, but how can they do it in a way that is not destructive?
You know, let us, the situation in Zimbabwe must also be understood in context. Because when the Smith regime was driven away during the negotiations in Lancaster, the British undertook to finance the transfer of land to the black majority. They reneged on that promise. And Mugabe's administration actually had a waiting period. And Mugabe was laboring under pressure. You fought independence on the basis that you would redistribute land. The people who promised to give you money have reneged on it. What do? And the Mugabe administration was acting in desperation. And therefore, a number of mistakes were made. If, for example, you give me a parcel of land of 2,000 acres, I don't know what to do with it. And that is what happened. But as to whether there was a case for redistribution of land, that can never be denied. That, in my view, can never be denied. Mistakes were made, and they were made in a manner that undermined agriculture in Zimbabwe. The question now to be asked, how do we repair the mistakes that were made so that we restore production to the level that they were and even make them better? And South Africa is now in a better situation. Knowing as you do, having watched the Zimbabwean situation, you must ask yourself the question, is it tenable that a small minority of the population should hold 72% of the land? It is not. You cannot rationalize it. And the sooner that is realized, the better. In my view, South Africa has an opportunity in a programmatic manner, by involving all stakeholders to redistribute land, because land is the last colonial question. And if you don't solve the problem of land now, you are merely postponing it. And you are postponing it to the detriment of the country. So my view is it is incumbent upon, in fact, it is too late in the day. There should be program. I know my good friend Maimane is here and is a politician and others. This is the time for the government to move with jet-like speed to begin engaging in the redistribution. No doubt in my mind. And very lastly, it must be done in a manner that does not undermine agriculture. And it can be done. If for example, you want to redistribute 14,000 acres of land, what prevents government to train people? What prevents government to create cooperatives? What prevents government to incorporate companies where people buy shares and then to have that owned in a manner that does not disrupt industry, does not disrupt agriculture? So let us always look at circumstances in the context of history. And I can give the example of Kenya. In Kenya, when we regained independence, the same British colonizer did enter into an arrangement for redistribution of land, and they actually did give some money. Although they didn't do it very well, we still have a land problem, but at least they did not behave the manner in which they behaved towards Zimbabwe. And I think that there are lessons to be drawn. In Kiswahili, which I'm told is taught in South Africa, there is a saying which goes like this: when your neighbor is being shaved, put water on your hair, because you are the next one to be shaved. So you saw what was happening in Zimbabwe, you in South Africa, and not only in South Africa, even in Namibia. We don't talk about Namibia as often as we should, but even Namibia faces that kind of scenario. And I believe that there are men and women of goodwill who want to see you a rainbow country. You will only retain your rainbowness if you behave in a rainbow manner.
I'll stick to my lane.
Actually, I like the way you concluded your answer, because the next question actually picks up from what you've just alluded to. So someone here says, thoughts on leadership for a racially divided country and creating national unity or common purpose for a diverse people. So basically the question is, how do you lead a nation which is racially divided, and there are deeply seated, challenges in terms of history and how communities have interrelated? How can one lead effectively to have the rainbow nation that you referred to?
No easy answers to questions such as those. No easy answers. But the truth is that, and when I read Nelson Mandela, when I try to understand or Tambo, who was out of the country for a long time, when I read the poem by Thabo Mbeki, I Am an African, when I listen to Mangaliso Sobukwe, they are saying, we have found ourselves in a historical situation which we must address. How do we address it? And I think in 1994, the leaders of South Africa made a conscious decision that we live in a country which is multi-ethnic, multi-racial. And when you live in such a situation, you then have to give and take. And you have given and have taken. Look at your own national anthem. There is no other anthem in the world like that. Yeah. None. But you chose that path. You then chose the path of recognizing different languages as official languages. Occasionally I listen to and sometimes enjoy the drama in your parliament. And one could be speaking in Afrikaans, then in English, then in isiZulu. No other parliament, national parliament in the world. How do you go forward? You can have all those things, But as long as economic inequalities exist, that is the game changer. From where I sit, that is the game changer. If there are inequalities, then people remember. People ask, but we killed apartheid. But have our circumstances changed? And those are the questions that we must eliminate. How do we eliminate them? By engaging in programs that create opportunities for all. Is it something that can be done in 5 years, in 10 years? No, it's not. It is something that will be done over a period of time. And people want to see conscious decisions being made and decisions being implemented. The reason why people get impatient is to think that those, particularly the black leaders, people are impatient with their black leaders. They are saying, but we thought we would be doing something, but your greatest claim to fame now is theft. Is theft. Somebody owns money which is ill-gotten, which could actually upgrade a slum area, could upgrade an informal settlement.
Sure.
These are the things that we are talking about. So in my view, if the leaders were to be conscious and say we want to serve, I was listening, all of us who are keen about Africa were listening to the Zondo report and to the deliberations. Look at the amount of money involved, and that is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
That is just the tip of the iceberg. If you conducted a lifestyle audit on those who are political leaders and bureaucrats across South Africa, you would be shocked. Perhaps nearly anything up to 30% of the GDP is in private hands. If you are to release that money into the communities in different parts of South Africa, that is how you begin to build the Rainbow Nation. A Rainbow Nation where people are not desperate economically. Economic desperation. Let me tell you, as a Christian, we are Christians here. You know, sometimes I try to understand Christ when I'm alone. Just try to understand him. This is the Son of God, and he knows. He says, man shall not live by bread alone.
Yeah.
Which means he needs bread, but he cannot live with it alone.
Yeah.
So when he goes into a crowd, he feeds the fellows, because he knows that when you are hungry, even the spirit becomes weak. So if you have no job and you are telling us to be united to love your neighbor, how can you love your neighbor who is eating caviar and you have not eaten? So, without belaboring the issue, let us not, even love goes beyond a certain point of elasticity.
Yeah.
And you will see as individuals, when you have money in your pocket, if you become a lot more courageous. I don't know whether you feel this. You are a lot more courageous. You don't mind if you pass next to a McDonald's, but if you have no money, you generally look for a sheep in where you'll consume umkombo. So, in a nutshell, economic inequality is something that must be addressed. And I conclude by saying, even our young men and women who are crossing the Mediterranean, if you ask, why are they running? It's because there are no opportunities at home. Is it that we can't create opportunities at home? We can create them. But those in positions of leadership are not doing, they are selling us short. And this is what, in fact, the very reason that we are assembled here, when we are looking at devoted citizens, when I look at the clip of Pastor Matebula here, what you are doing, distribute, that is not, in a proper situation, that should not be your work. Whenever you are doing that, it means that some government department has failed. It has failed. And indeed, if you go to their budget, it could very well be true that there is money allocated for what we are doing. So these are the things that we are talking about, but as all of us know, it is not easy, it is not for the faint-hearted. We must talk about them, we must play our part, because lamentation without action. For example here, the beauty of this assembly here is that we are lamenting, we are criticizing, but we are doing something in our own corner. Because if you are asked, what are you doing? Say, yes, this is what we are doing. We are also making a contribution. But you have a larger duty, you have a budget, you have taxpayers' money to use. But where are you taking the taxpayers? You are building and buying an apartment in Dubai and Mauritius and Seychelles?
Thank you.
You don't have to ask me anything. We ask him.
There is actually a question. There are a few questions that have come through, and I'll summarize for you in terms of the role of the church. So the question here is around the fact that how can the church be a trusted partner in changing the status quo that you so eloquently spoke about this morning? How can we trust the church given the mushrooming of charlatans, if I may call them that, in the body of Christ, who are reaping the hard-earned cash of poor people by brainwashing them, and then they turn around and they say they are men and women of God? How can the church be a trusted partner?
You know, that is a question.
You can
Let me answer it first as a member of the laity. By their fruits you shall know them. By their fruits. By their fruits. And today, it cannot be denied that there is no shortage of charlatans masquerading as men and women of God. By their fruits you shall know them. You can see, if you have a situation where people are using the word of God for personal benefit to the detriment of the community, sooner rather than later they will be punished. And I'm saying that sometimes the word church is used very loosely. Who is the church? It is us. It is us. The church is us. Sometimes we think that the church are the clergy. The clergy and us make the church. This thing is not a church. This building, this thing could be a casino. If we bring machining rooms, this could be a tavern. It is us worshiping God that make it a church. And you remember on that day that Christ said that you have converted my Father's house into a different thing. So my own view is, if you look at the church, and you are not going, in fact, if you look at Paul's second letter to Timothy at chapter 3, which I advise you to read, he says, in the last days, there'll be a form of Christianity where people will be lovers of themselves. These are those last days. But just as Jannes and Jambres disturbed Moses in the desert, it will happen to us, but our discerning spirit should tell us what is right and wrong. So I am saying, as I conclude, that the church, we the church, we are relevant because we cannot live our lives in compartments. There is, when people say that the church should not be involved in politics, they are telling the citizens who are Christian, don't involve yourself in politics. How can it happen? We cannot, because our life is a totality of our civic duties which constitute our very being. What we are saying is that when you are a member of the church, it should be self-evident. When you are driving, when you are in an office, sometimes you see there are people who may tell you, I'm born again, and say, are you born again? Because your activities and the activities of those who are born again are worlds apart. So my view, we as the church, and I think we should now begin to change our understanding of the church. The clergy are not the church. It is us. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised in quite a number of these congregations that we attend, that on the day of judgment, you'll see your pastor going to hell and you are going to heaven. Yes. It is quite possible. And the reason is simple. Because he was preaching the word of God, you followed the word of God, but he preached or she preached but did not believe. So we, the church, have a duty to make a contribution. Thank you very much.
Sibu, I don't have to add much on that. I'm glad that it came from Prof. What has been worrying me, troubling me for years, is to see the Church of Jesus taking a back seat. Yeah. You know, all this that we are doing here, I think it is that call that we want to give it to the people, to say, church, it is time now. It is time now. We cry for a great leadership, and it has always troubled me. You go to our churches, any church in South Africa, there's excellence. Look at the excellence that is here. But what has been troubling me, you don't see this excellence in our community. You have a church like this, but on the street, just over the street, the grass, the weeds all over. And I'm saying the excellence only remains within the walls of the church. Does this pleases God? We need to take this thing out of this building and become the salt and the light of the world. And that's it. So Prof has said much on that. I think he was spot on. But for me, that is where we are. And I'm still saying it to the pastors. That is why, without, attacking anybody, but it always troubled me to park a 7 Series next to a tent. I always had a problem with that. And I said to those who were close to me, I said, build first. Let the 7 Series or Mercedes-Benz come later. Because people misinterpret this thing of pastoring. It's like a pastor is a Mercedes-Benz, and a tent. Yet the people are not impacted. It's more about the lives of people. Jesus says, I have come so that they may have life, and life in abundance. One translation says, life overflowing. Now, something that is overflowing, watch this. If I am holding a cup here of glass, and I'm pouring water, and that water will overflow, and then will actually come to the floor. If I keep on pouring, the water will leave this floor, go through the doors. If I keep on pouring, the water will go through the doors into the streets. Something that is overflowing must leave the doors of the building, must go to the streets in our community, must impact South Africa. Why should we keep this to ourselves? So we need to impact. So I strongly believe the Church of Jesus must actually do that. But I'm so excited to say that COVID has made the church to be real. That is why I'm so confident. Come 2024, South Africa will never be the same because of these people who are here. Unfortunately, our time.
Our time is really running out, and I think maybe as the last question, I felt let's include the young people, because there is a question actually that addresses some of their issues. Considering the amount of mistakes that need to be corrected, how can young people begin to address the mistakes, leveraging on the resources and the tools such as technology that we currently have? So how can the youth shift and catapult us into a brighter future as a continent and as a country?
I hold the view that the younger generation is in a better position than the older generation. Technology gives us the opportunity to leapfrog some of the nations that were ahead of us in terms of development. And I think training of young people in a proper manner is something that is very critical. Technology is a double-edged sword. It depends on how you use it. If you use it negatively, then it will have a negative impact. You can spend all your time on Twitter or Instagram or all these other media very negatively. But you can also expend that energy in a very positive way. And that is where training comes in. It is the duty of the older generation to train young men and women in a manner that will help them use the tools at their disposal in a positive manner. And that is why we must have a positive influence. There is an Igbo saying from Nigeria. It says that when mother cow is chewing, baby cow looks and emulates. So if we conduct ourselves in a proper manner, then the younger generation will also conduct themselves in a proper manner. And we must also be modest enough to make them know that we are not infallible. Yeah. You know, if you make them know that you are not infallible, you make them know that we made mistakes, then they'll avoid the landmines which we stepped on. And I think that is the duty of each one of us. And this must not only be the responsibility of government. It must start from the house. What are we doing in our households? How are we mentoring our young men and women? How are we mentoring our young men and women in schools? How are we mentoring them in churches, in mosques, in synagogues? I think it is an African reality that a child is a child of the community. Yeah. And if a child is a child of the community, it means that it is the duty of the community to rebuke the child and to correct the child. I have great faith in African youth, but my faith is guarded. Is guarded because the world is also full of many negative attractions from which they must be protected. It is our duty to do so, and to do so consistently, and to do so vigilantly. I want to conclude by giving a few examples. You know, during our lifetime, most of us, we have seen this country called China. Say anything you want to say about China. Yeah. But there is something that they have done that is amazing. It used to be the case that if you had a poor quality product, it came from China. Today, China gives you what you want. If you want poor quality, they give you. If you want the best quality, they give you. They have a menu, they have a buffet of products, and you choose. But in our lifetime, the Chinese have grown, and we can see it. There is something to learn from the Chinese. I see in the streets of Africa, and there are many of them. Their work ethic, their discipline, even when they are eating, it is in small bowls. You and me will be eating pap, a huge pap. But them small bowls, they work like bees. That is something to be emulated. Look at the Koreans, the South Koreans, how they work. And the beauty of the global world is that it gives you the opportunity to see how others are doing their things. You accept the things that are positive and reject the things that are negative. And I think that is what we should do as Africans. Within the continent of Africa, I'm not saying that we are doing things that are not good. Many of our things are not being well done, particularly in the political class. But we can do things. And our young people have the capacity to do, and we learn these things. And let me tell you, when I was younger, I thought I could change the world. I now know better. I now know better. And what do I know? That I only make my contribution. Yeah. When you make your contribution, a positive contribution. And that is all I do. And when you make your contribution, that is how the world changes. You know, Mahatma Gandhi at one time was asked, but there is so much iniquity in the world. He said, yes, it is an imperfect world. There'll always be iniquity. But do you condemn the ocean because one bubble is dirty? No, you don't. Mother Teresa, whom Miss Matebula talked about, once said, if you go into a dark room and you find it dark, you can complain all you want, but there is another choice. Light a candle. And let your neighbor light a candle. And lo and behold, the light will conquer the darkness. So I'm urging us, you young people, be the single candle that it may be said of you that amidst the gloom, you are the glitter. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. I think that is where I want to appeal to all business people, all leaders here. I don't believe that God has blessed you with those millions so that you can just wake up in the morning and look at that account and say, There are many young people who would need you to empower them.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about my story in closing. I ran away from home at the age of 10. I was in the streets of Johannesburg for 5 years, living like a hobo. Like a hobo. I would just try to get anything just to eat, smoking glue. A woman picked me up at the age of 15 and said, you know what? I'm going to take you to school. I will just build your life and you can become something. At the age of 22, I did not even pass matric. They actually made me to pass. But she believed in me. She believed in me. May her soul rest in peace. Look what the Lord has done today. I'm a family man today. I'm a pastor of the church. I'm a pastor in the community. Just because of somebody who saw something in me. I am asking you, do that for somebody else. There's those kids out there, those young people out there. You'd never know. Just a 500 rand of a school uniform. To say, go to school, I may not do everything for you. It will go a long way. We know what is happening in this country. So that is my request. And to all the leaders and all of you who have been blessed by God, let us bring a change into this nation. And then I'll close with those words.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Maybe in closing, this is not a question, it's a remark, it's a request. Somebody says here, Prof for President of Africa.
Thank you.
Another person says, will you open a leadership school for Africans? They want to be the first one to enroll. Yeah. Asante sana, Prof.
Asante
Thank
sana.
you.
Thank you.